And thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope your Saturday is wonderful and the sun is shining where you are. Just to give you a bit of a recap as to who we are, if you're not sure or if you don't know very much about Ideal Homes. Been in the industry for about 10 years now. Our head office is based over in the Algarve in Portugal. And we deal with obviously real estate in Portugal and in Spain and various countries around the world, with the aim of providing all the services that you may need regarding mortgages, currency exchange, legal advice, and obviously finding the right property and locations as well, all under one roof. So we try and encapsulate that under one company. Hence Ideal Homes was formed with that motive, with that idea in mind. So last week we discussed, for those of you who joined us last week, we discussed, and those of you who didn't, you can catch it on the YouTube channel. We discussed the areas which is good for investments, what the areas are like in terms of how busy they are, if they're sort of tourism driven. And we also sort of tried to give you an overview as to what life is like here in Spain as well, because obviously culturally it's a little bit different for those of you who are thinking of relocating full time. It's good to know exactly what you're letting yourself in for, which, as I said, I've been here for a few years now, well, quite a few years, and I've not looked back since coming over from the UK. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to look at various subjects, one of them market conditions, sort of looking at whether or not the prices are set to fall and how people can sort of play it now regarding the economic crisis and that's at hand. And we're also going to touch on things like your driving motivating factor. So what is actually forcing you to make a purchase in Spain and how you can use that to kind of give you a bit more of an idea as to how you should play it strategically. The buying process, giving you a step-by-step idea as to how the buying process works. Areas to consider and why. And what to do next if somebody is sort of wanting to proceed further and obviously doing it remotely, how they can go about doing that as well. So we'll just sort of take that first subject, which is the market conditions. Now, one of the questions people are sort of posing to us is it likely that the market will force properties to drop in price? Will developers, will resales become cheaper? Now, as I can't say categorically yes or no, I'm not sensing that there's going to be a huge reduction in costs. And obviously it's done on a case-by-case basis. What I will say is everybody is in their own private sort of situation. So private vendors may lower their prices if they need to get out, if they need to buy, and if they're forced to lower their price due to the economic crisis. The new build developments, and if you are sort of looking at new build, that's not really going to change in price. We've been in contact with many developers, some of the best developers in the region, and they are not lowering their prices, but what they are doing is offering incentives. So they may, for instance, on a townhouse, there's a free swimming pool that they're offering as an incentive. They're actually giving you the air conditioning free, or maybe furnishing the property, or installing an island in your kitchen area, whatever it might be to try and sweeten the deal, but they're not sort of giving 10% off or forcing anybody to do likewise. And I think that's purely because the crisis has kind of hit globally. So everything is on a standstill everywhere. And the developers are kind of playing the waiting game. I think they're kind of trying to see whether or not things moving forward will rectify themselves. And they have their budgets, they're quite, the prices here are quite, they're quite strict in the sense of there's quite a lot of competition amongst developers. So if one lowers their price, then the other one has to, and so on and so forth. So at the moment, talking to developers, no, there isn't really going to be a price fall. What may happen, there may be an instance where you'll find that there's a quick deals being done, or if you're a cash buyer, you're not needing a mortgage, etc., and cash is king, you can try and force their hand that way, but they will not publicize any sort of discounts at this moment in time. So the next point I want to go through is the driving factor behind making a purchase. Now, what I mean by that is there's usually an element of both investment and also holiday home. Sometimes it's a strong mixture of the two, but sometimes you'll find that people are more on one than the other. And what I mean by that is if you're looking at mainly an investment, are you going to be using the property yourself? So do you need it to be near the beach? Do you need it to be, close to an airport? Do you need it to have the following criteria if you're going to rent the property out? Because obviously that's going to be quite important for you to attract the rentals on a year out basis. If you're going to use it as a holiday home, will you want to use it as an investment when you're not using it as a holiday home? So are you going to rent outside of that period? And that can become quite an important factor. When you're looking at investment properties and you're looking at the sheer choice that's here at the moment, you have to be quite selective. So that may override your choice when it comes to actually having as a holiday home, if I can actually get my teeth in. The type of rental prospects here are actually very, very, very good. You can get properties here which can rent from 6 to 9 to €1,000 a week during the summer. And then obviously outside of the summer season, the rentals are going to be quite sparse. But most people will make their rental income for the whole year just in the summer season alone. The summer season will range from, say, July right the way through to September. And the more facilities and amenities that you can factor in, i.e. golf courses, shopping centres, close to an airport, the beach, and maybe a walking distance to a local town, that will have an impact as to what you can command rental-wise on a year in, year out basis. So I would always advise people to have a really good think as to what their driving factor is. Is it mainly investment or is it lifestyle? We deal with a lot of clients who just say, no, I just want to use the property for myself. I'm not going to rent. It may just be rented for family and friends. And in which case, okay, that's great. Then you can go with your head rather than go with your heart rather than your head. If you're going to use it as an investment, then you really have to do some number crunching and find out, one, if the area is desirable, if it's got all the amenities, and two, what your rental tax is going to be and what you need to cover on a year in, year out basis. How much, what sort of ROI are you looking at? What type of return of investment are you looking at? So all of these things will have a knock-on effect and an impact. So I would definitely find out from you when looking for a property on your behalf, what is your motivating factor? So if you would like us to find a property for you, we would have a chat with you for half an hour to an hour onwards, depending on how long it takes, and find out really what your tick list is, and then kind of find a property that fits that remit. So the next step is the buying process. I will just sort of touch on the buying process on a very vague and generalized basis because it can change depending on if it's a development or if it's a resale, etc. But the first thing you need is an NIE number. An NIE number is basically like a national insurance number in the UK, and you need an NIE number to open a bank account, to set up a telephone, to have internet, etc. So the first thing you need to apply for is an NIE, and the way you do that is by going to the local police station in the town of where you're thinking of buying. You would submit your documents, i.e. your passport and proof of ID, like a utility bill from the UK. They will then issue you with an NIE number. Once you've got the NIE number, you found the property that you would like to put an offer on, or you found the property you like, you would then put a reservation fee down. The reservation fee could be 3, 5 or 6,000 euros. And what that will simply do is take the unit off the market, it freezes the price, and it will enable the solicitor that you've instructed to start doing his due diligence on your behalf. Once you've paid your reservation fee, and this is where it gets a bit vague because again, it will depend on if it's a resale or a new build, but you would then have your first initial deposits. Your first initial deposit can be 10%, 20%, etc. Sometimes there's stage payments, sometimes there's a lump sum. So you have your first initial deposit paid, then you would go down the route of either financing the property yourself, either through a mortgage, or obviously waiting until completion to settle. So it's a 3-step process. Usually it's you obtain an NIE number, reservation fee, deposit, and then you take it straight to deed. So it's a very simplified process, very easy to get along with. It's an established process. People have been buying property here for many, many years. And now it's a very commonplace to even jump this and skip the step of paying the reservation fee and just paying the deposit straight away, which is entirely up to yourself. Some people prefer to do that. But I would say that once you've paid your reservation fee, it's non-refundable. So you would have to be absolutely certain that that is the property that you would like to go for. So the whole process takes roughly about 4 to 6 weeks. dependent if you need a mortgage or not. Sometimes it can be a little bit longer. So very easy, very straightforward process. And I'm sure you would have either known friends who've gone through the process, or you've been online and you've done some research and you've seen that it's quite a simplified and normal process. Areas to consider, and again, this will jump me right back to the beginning of the conversation where I discussed the motivating factor. Now, the area where we cover is from Alicante, so that will take you right up from, say, Denia, down to Benidorm, through to Villaraigosa, down to Torrevieja, right the way down to the borders of Murcia. And then we also look at Murcia as well, going down into Costa Calida. Now, if you are sort of looking at property in the Murcia region, you have to be very, very careful as to what areas you decide to go for. Now, there's an area which I'm sure you've heard of called Mar Menor, which is quite a hotspot for tourism. Now, that area completely dies off during the winter. It's very much a summer seasonal area, driven by tourism. If you was to go in the winter, you're going to find there's going to be a lack of restaurants open, lack of transport, buses, train routes, etc. So that's an area which I would say from a holiday home point of view is fantastic, but from an investment point of view, I wouldn't say it's going to be quite as advantageous as to go in somewhere slightly more established like Alicante. Alicante, you've got loads of golf courses, you've got usually I would say a close walking distance close to a town if you're going towards the coast. And you've also got fantastic property prices. Now, it doesn't mean that one area is better than the other. It just means that one is suited dependent on what you want the property to do for you. So areas which I would consider would be areas in Murcia, close to the coast, Santiago de la Ribera, which is one. You've got Pilar de la Holadada, which is another. And then going round into the Mar Menor area, because you can get some fantastic prices on property there, with some fantastic sea views, but just bear in mind it's going to be slightly more seasonal. So that's where it's going to be good to use local knowledge and expertise from people who live in the area to kind of point you in the right direction in terms of where to go and where not to go. In Alicante, I would say that there's Torrevieja, which is quite a hotspot for most people. They've been in holidays there, and fantastic properties there for good prices. But it has become quite saturated over recent months. So I would be very, very careful in going into that area. But just on the shoulder of Torrevieja, let's say Punta Prima or La Florida, these areas are still buzzing and still have, again, fantastic property prices, walking distance to the town, close to all amenities, and you're only, let's say, 35 minutes, 40 minutes from the international airport. The airports in both Alicante and Murcia are established international airports, so accessibility isn't going to be a problem at all. But what I will say is that the flights are better in Alicante. It's a bigger, more established airport. But just keep that in mind that Murcia is a new airport. The flights are only starting to, well, before the crisis, we're only starting to come on board and will improve over time. And this will have a knock-on effect in terms of your property price, because as the area becomes more established, that will reflect in the property cost as well. So hopefully that gives you an idea in terms of the buying process. And if you are sort of looking at mortgages are available here. What I will say is that you will see advertised at 70% of the property value mortgages here in Spain. I would say for a non-resident, you're probably going to get offered, on most occasions, 60% of the property value. So I will say, if you are going to look at a mortgage option, budget for about 60% of the property value and have 40% liquidity. The mortgages range from 20 to 30 years. You've got up to the age of 75. You've got usually around about 35% of your net income, which is taken into consideration regarding your income and expenditure. And it's a variable rate of about, say, 2.9%, up to, let's say, a fixed rate of about, say, 3.7%. Again, those numbers fluctuate, so it's always good to deal with an established broker who can search the local banks on your behalf and present the best packages to you. So again, mortgages, if you do need to go for a mortgage, not a problem to do here. And we find that it's cheaper to get a mortgage in Spain than it is to try and get a bank in the UK to administer a mortgage for Spanish properties. The closing costs on properties as a whole, you're probably looking at anywhere from 12 to 14%. Again, it's very much dependent on the services needed. So some people will actually sign over power of attorney to a solicitor so that they can obtain your NIE number and also guide you through the whole buying process and also act as your representative in your absence. Let's say, for instance, you flew over, you found a property you like, and you needed to go through the motions. You don't need to keep on doing return flights each time. The solicitor can take it from there for you and act on your behalf. So I would say if you budget for about 14% of the agreed purchase price of the property, that will cover all your legal fees. It's slightly cheaper to buy a property in Murcia than it is in Alicante, by about, say, 1.5% to 2%. But again, it very much depends on what you're looking for, and we can guide you in that respect as well. So that kind of gives you hopefully an idea in terms of the buying process. Now, one of the questions that is posed, especially since Brexit, is can people from the UK buy a property here? The answer is yes. People from outside of the European Union have been buying property here for many years, and they will continue to do so. So it's not going to change anything at all. What you may find is that you may have to contribute to the healthcare system. So a lot of people who are residing here full time are actually going on to private healthcare rather than, let's say, for instance, using the national healthcare system. However, if you are a resident here, then you will become, in a sense, a Spanish person, and you will have all the facilities as a normal Spaniard would. So if you needed to become a resident for that basis, again, we can guide you through that process. It's a very, again, easy process to do. But yes, you will be able to buy property post-Brexit and pre-Brexit. You know, we haven't left yet. So obviously the deal is meant to be towards the end of the year, and they are extending a few of the facilities as well, just that little bit longer to help us through that transitional period. Whether or not it's going to impact any more than that, I cannot say, because nobody knows at this moment in time. But you definitely can buy property post-Brexit and also move here full-time. There is also something called the Golden Visa, which is for really to encourage investment into the country. Now, what that does is if you spend over 500,000 euros, you can become and apply for residency here. So that's one option that people have. Again, it's not going to suit everybody because it's quite a high price range. But there's also other underlying factors as well. So if you're going to do a renovation project, you can actually lower that cost as well. But again, that's really for somebody who wants to sort of apply for residency to, in the end, become and try and get a European passport. Again, we can guide you through that process and sort of encourage you through that if that's something you want to look into. So the sort of overview on buying property at the moment and if it's a good bet, yes, absolutely. I cannot say whether or not the prices will drop in the future, but they're not showing, as I say, any indicating factors moving forward. Then developers are being quite firm. Obviously, resales, if people are in a financial position, you can put some offers on the table, which are getting accepted. But I would always say Spain has become a hotspot for many European countries, also from, let's say, France, from Belgium, from Germany, from Sweden, and they're coming here and will also continue to do that. So if you're looking at things as to, you know, is it worth doing it now? Absolutely. It would just be a matter of going to the right place and finding the right hotspot for you, and also looking into the right location, because the location will make a huge difference. Now, to sort of give you an idea, there is, in Torrevieja, for instance, the population during the summer trebles. It's an incredibly busy area during the summer. You do get fantastic rental income, but people find it problematic to park. People find that it's very crowded, and it's, I think, now becoming to the point where people are starting to look just outside of those areas because the property prices are cheaper, it's a little bit less busy, and it offers exactly the same facilities. So again, working with you on a one-to-one basis, the normal procedure would be we would find out what you want the property to do for you, and then we would try and find a property that ticks all those boxes. Can you buy a property remotely and without the use of obviously coming over and looking at it firsthand? I would say this is a very tricky thing. Obviously, we would like for people to do that, absolutely. But I would say it's easier if you know the area, because the one thing you're going to want to do is sort of have some knowledge on the local area. If you're going to sort of buy a property remotely, try and look at, again, your motivating factors. If it's for rentals, then we can provide a rental history on the property to make sure that your overheads are going to be covered and the property is going to pay for itself. And we'll try and fit as best we can a property and location that best suits your requirements. But I would say, yes, it's possible to buy a property remotely. We have clients who are buying properties at this moment in time, one going through currently. She's already been to the area, she knows the area quite well, she's seen the property, she knows the development, and she's put an offer in, it's accepted, and obviously she's going through the motions. So I would say, yes, it's possible to do, but I would also say do as much research as you possibly can before making that leap. Once you've paid your reservation fee, as I say, it's non-refundable, so you are tied in legally. All right. So that's pretty much an overview on buying a property here in Spain. Before I go any further, is there any questions? Does anyone have any questions for me at all?
Hi, Ben. So we've had a couple of questions come through, which if possible we can answer. And obviously, just to remind everyone, your microphones are muted. So if you have any questions, you can either unmute them or ask in the chat. But to start with, someone has asked how important it is to have a Spanish will.
Okay, so a Spanish will. I would say that it is important to have a Spanish will because your property here, let's say for instance, if you have a will in the UK, your property will just be passed on to your next of kin. But if you have a Spanish will, your property on your estate here will be guided as per se your will. So most people who buy a property in the UK will actually have a will in both the UK and in Spain that marry and say the same, so that it takes care of your estate here in Spain. So yes, I would say it's cheap enough to do, and I would say it's worth doing, definitely.
Great, thank you for answering that. Another one, moving on to taxes, would be how often does a non-resident UK investor need to submit tax returns, presumably once a year as it is the same in the UK?
Correct. It's once a year as it is the same in the UK, and with the double taxation treaty, again, I don't think this will change post-Brexit, but with the double taxation treaty in place, it means that if you pay tax in one country, you do not pay it in the country where you reside to stop you having to pay tax twice. So what you would do is you would submit your forms, you have your tax declaration documents, and then you would use that and when you submit your documents in the UK. So yes, it's you would pay it in one country, and usually it's better to pay it in Spain for cost reasons.
Perfect. Another one to add to the tax. I don't know if this is a question you'll be able to answer or if we can speak to our legal advisors. But they understand that UK investors will be subject to 24% tax rate compared to the rest of the EU states.
Yes, for yeah.
Do we know if there is going to be an alignment to mirror the rest of the EU and say Norway?
No, at this time. Whether or not that's something that could come on board later, I couldn't say, but that is correct, and that's what it stands at the moment. So whether that will change, I'm not sure. Some people decide to set up companies in Spain and pay less tax by going through a company, etc. But that will depend on how much you're generating. And I would always say, rather than speaking to myself, we can put you in contact with a legal advisor who can sort of give you the best way to reduce and to maximize your returns. So yes, that is correct. Nothing on the board, nothing on the table as it stands.
Okay, great. Another one, what other taxes are applicable if you are not intending to rent?
So the main two costs that you have on a yearly, bi-monthly or quarterly basis is you'll find that you have your condominium charges if you're buying into a complex. So that would be the upkeep of the complex. So that would be things like your maintenance of the pools, your garden area, stairwells and general common places being maintained, etc. So that cost will range dependent on the facilities that you have in place. So if you have one heated pool, a spa facility, a gym, lush green gardens, then yes, you're going to pay more than somebody who just has one pool for the complex. That will range from anywhere from, let's say, 200 euros right the way up to 600, 700, 800 euros, again, dependent on the area and the facilities. The other cost that you will have is the equivalent of your council tax in the UK, and that will be calculated on the size of the property and the region your property is in. So that can again range from €200 to, let's say, for instance, €600 on a yearly basis. Can even be a little bit more, depending if you go into sort of north of Alicante Airport into Denia, where properties and land is a little bit cheaper, a little bit more expensive. So those are your main two running costs that you will need to pay. Now, within that, you've got your utility bills as well. The most expensive utility bill that you will have is your water. Water tends to be quite expensive here due to the sanitation of water and the redistribution of water. The next cost that you will have is electric, because most of the properties will run on electric rather than electric and gas. So the gas mains is in various places, but not everywhere, especially on the coast, because of the age of the properties. And if you do have gas, you'll find that it's done with gas canisters, which can be bought at most places, including the petrol stations. So you would get your gas canister and you would use that for your hot water and obviously to use for your cooking. So gas tends to be very, very cheap. I mean, a gas canister for, let's say, a family of 4 will probably last around 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, depending on the usage. So gas is actually relatively cheap. And with now the solar technology coming on board, and with the government here passing an act that says that more properties can get solar panels and fitted on their properties, that's also reducing the cost of your energy consumption as well. So the most expensive cost, I would say, is water. Again, you've got your council tax to pay, and then you've got your rubbish collection, which can sometimes be incorporated into your council tax, or it's a separate cost. And if it's a separate cost, it's usually only £50 per quarter. So it's €50, sorry. So it's not too expensive at all. But in most places, it's incorporated into your council tax.
Great, thank you for answering that. A question from Paul is, will I be able to emigrate to Spain post-Brexit and live in Spain 100% of the time?
I would like to say yes, and I'm confident in saying yes. Post-Brexit, nobody knows, and I would be lying if I said I had the answers post-Brexit. I can only speculate as much as everyone else at this moment in time, because no deals have been sort of presented. What I will say, though, is that people outside of the European Union can reside here full-time, and so I can't see why it would be any different for us. What implications or what impacts we would need to put in place, etc., I don't know. You can do it. I would say if you are thinking of living here full-time, best to start the paperwork and the process now, in terms of applying for your residency, applying for your NIE number, etc. It's going to be easier for you to do it at this moment in time than after, but I can't see there being any hiccups moving forwards. I don't think there's going to be drones of people going back to the UK, and Spaniards living in the UK sort of having to move back to Spain, because I think that would be detrimental on both economies. So yes, you can. The process is relatively simple with regards to applying for your residency. How and what you will need to do moving forward, at this time we cannot say, but we'll keep in contact and we can sort of update you moving forward and let you know how it will work.
Hello? Hello?
Hi.
Hi. Can you hear me?
I can indeed. Do you have a question or?
Hi, my name is Irene.
Hi.
Hi, I just have a question. Can I ask my question?
Sure, I'll try my best to.
Okay. You know if I'm buying an apartment, for instance.
Yeah.
What does it come with? Is it freehold or leasehold? And what does it come with?
It will be freehold.
Do you get that?
Yeah, it will be freehold. Correct.
Okay, so what documentation do I get with that?
You will have everything on your deeds. In terms of when you buy the property, you would have it on your deed, and it will be clearly written out exactly if you're going for, let's say, a villa, it will tell you what your boundary lines are. It will tell you it will document absolutely everything. So yes, you will have that all within the deeds. And leasehold properties in the way that we know them in the UK do not exist in Spain. So you will be buying freehold.
Okay. My next question, sorry, it's I'm not sure where to buy because I'm not very familiar with Spain.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be a cash buyer, and I'm looking more like Alicante or is it Alicante or Almeria?
Okay, yeah.
So will I be able to get a good property, minimum 2 bedrooms, for about €70,000?
Again, yes, I would say definitely not a problem to do, but it all very much depends on what you're wanting the property for and also what type of areas you like. There is fantastic options in Alicante and also in Almeria. Now, in Almeria, you'll find that the area is a little bit less, it's a quieter, slightly more residentialized area. You've got holiday hotspots there as well, but it's not as established and as busy as Alicante. And for that reason, it will also reflect in the price.
Okay, so you get more for your money.
You do. But again, if you are wanting the property to rent on a year in, year out basis to help cover the costs of the property, then I may not say that Almeria may be the best option for you.
No, it's just, I think it's just going to be like a holiday home for us.
Sure.
So we're not renting.
Well, the short answer is yes, you definitely can get a property with that in mind. And I think the best thing moving forward is that if my email address will come up, if we keep in contact, I will be able to give you sort of more of a one-to-one approach and sort of give you advice as to where and what type of properties to go for. Because obviously at this moment in time, I don't know enough about your wish list to be able to say yes or no. But the more we sort of keep in contact, I'll be able to guide you through that. But on the short answer, yes, there's properties at €70,000, close to an airport, close to amenities, close to a local town.
Like walking distance, because we're not going to be using a car.
Correct. Yeah, walking distance, not a problem at all. And the great thing is what you just mentioned as well is if you don't want to have a hire car, or if you don't want to have a small vehicle when you're based here, there is enough sort of to keep you interested. The infrastructure regarding transportation is great bus routes, great. In fact, even the taxis are relatively inexpensive as well. So to commute around isn't going to be a problem at all.
Okay, all right. So do I keep in touch with you? Is that Ben? Am I talking to Ben?
You are indeed. Yes, we'll keep in contact. My email address will pop up shortly. And by all means, just feel free to send me an email. I'll get your details, I'm sure. And we'll keep in contact and see where we go from there.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any further questions?
So there has one that's come through, which is, what are the most common reasons for people to encounter problems when moving to Spain? You hear of quite a few properties up for sale for a long time as people end up wanting to move back. So what problems would you say people may occur? Or the most common ones?
Okay, so if I understand that question correctly, it's for people who have already got a property here who are wanting to sell their property, and also for people wanting to come over, what problems could they encounter? So I'll tackle that. What problems could somebody encounter when moving here? The main thing is obviously the culture is different with services and banks, etc., closing at completely different times to what we're used to. In terms of what problems could you encounter here, to be honest, I haven't really got any sort of feedback on problems per se. Obviously, there are sort of things regarding if you have a prescription in the UK, you may find certain things in terms of getting that same prescription over in Spain. People drawing on pensions and the implications with tax regarding drawing your pension in Spain rather than, obviously from the UK, which, as far as we're aware, and at this moment in time, isn't going to change. But in terms of problems per se, I mean, there isn't really any at all. I mean, as I say, I've been living here for quite some number of years. I have 3 kids, and they're in a national school, and we haven't really encountered any problems at all. You'll find that with the sun, the sea, and the sand, everything can be made better when you've got the beach only a stone's throw away. So I haven't really got an answer for that one, really. I mean, you'll find that some people who buy very quickly. They buy without the thought of reselling at a later date. And there is a lot of competition now with the new build properties. And I'll give you an example. There is a complex that we're currently promoting where the resale properties are only €10,000 cheaper than the new build property. The new build property has an extra bathroom, and it's got the cover of the building guarantee. So if there's anything structurally that changes with the property, you're covered. You've got a guarantee there, and it's newer. Who doesn't want to live in something brand new? So the only thing I would say is that be careful where you buy in terms of the location, but that's with the hindsight of wanting to sell at a later date. If you're not going in with that thought process, then it may not be something that you will tackle head on. So With regards to seeing lots of property on sale, that could be on a case-by-case basis due to demand for an area, due to accessibility, etc. So I can't really give a hard and fast answer to that. Sorry to be so vague, but it's there's going to be many variables on that, so I wouldn't be able to sort of go into precise detail. But if you do think that you are going to use the property for 5 years with the thought of selling onwards, then let us know, because we can guide you with regards to buying into an area that is in high demand and that has good transportation links and has a good sort of tourism numbers sort of year in, year out, so that if you are thinking of reselling, then you're going to have a market there. And that brings me on to sort of, earlier when sort of, I think it was Irene wanted to know about Almeria. I mean, Almeria isn't sort of driving, numbers-wise, isn't driving tourism as much as, say, Alicante. So on the resale side, it may take slightly longer to sell her property. But again, it's making sure the property is in a good area, it's competitively priced, and it's dressed accordingly. So, make sure that it's, modern, there's good sized kitchen, modern sort of kitchen. And if it's furnished as well, that's great. It will just help push that sale forward faster.
Great, thank you. There is one question here that I've noticed it has popped up a few times, if you can clarify. Is it possible to transfer a UK mortgage to Spain?
Transfer a UK mortgage to Spain? As far as I'm aware, no. I haven't heard of any banks offering that facility. Again, what we've got to bear in mind is that a lot of banks will want to carry out valuations on properties to find out its true value before moving forward. And a lot of UK banks cannot offer that facility. So it's very difficult for UK banks to offer competitive mortgage rates for properties in Spain. Transferring a mortgage from the UK to Spain, again, we can put you in contact with a mortgage broker who can maybe clarify. But as far as I'm aware, that's not a possibility. Most people who are looking at a property in Spain who have a UK mortgage have to sell their property in the UK to then buy a property here. Or what they will do is either release equity, continue to rent their property in the UK, and then obviously use that equity release to buy a property here. So as far as I'm aware, that's not an option.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Another couple of questions. We'll start with, when buying a resale property, what should one be aware of in addition to making sure that the property complies with all local authority requirements?
Okay, so the main thing that you're going to want to make sure is in place is you have something called it's a document to basically say that it's been approved for residency, so that it can inhabit occupants. So that's the main document that you want to have. But what we will do, and any property that we advertise on our website and we promote, is that we do a general checklist to make sure that all the necessary documents are in place. So you can rest assured anything you see on our website is legal. It has all the residence permits in place. If you want to rent the property out, it's got a touristic license in place. All of these things would actually be taken into consideration before you've even looked at the property. Then when you've paid your reservation fee will then instruct, and you pay your deposit, will then instruct your solicitor to then make sure that all those requirements are in place. And that's obviously their job, to make sure that, number one, there's no debt on the property. So debts will usually stay with the person in the UK. In Spain, they stay with the property. So if there is an electric bill and you decide to sell the property, the property will still have that electric bill as an overhead. So the solicitor can make sure that there's no sort of debts on the property that exist, and sort of make sure that it's debt-free and allow you to then use that property. If there is a debt, they can wipe that debt, they can push that debt back to the respective company. So yes, to answer that question, we will make sure that all the details, all the correct paperwork, etc., is already in place before you move forward.
Okay, thank you. Another one is, are there any capital gains taxes that need to be paid on property sales?
Yes, capital gains tax is set to change, in fact. So what I will do is I've got a document on email. So if I can grab the email address, I'll send an email which actually sort of lists exactly how much you will need to pay, and also what the projected is post-Brexit, because that's something that could change. So if I take an email address, rather than me go through those figures now, which is quite a few figures and quite a lot of detail there, it's probably best if I send it to you on email so you've got it there to read at your leisure. But yes, capital gains tax does apply. But depending on where you are, if you're in Europe, outside of Europe, if you have a company set up, there are ways that you can minimize. And that's the same with with most of the taxes here. So I've got a document, again, from the lawyer who can sort of give you a bit of backup there as well, and they can go through that information in a bit more detail. But yeah, if I can grab the email address of the person who requested that, and I'll get that document sent out.
Perfect, thank you. That's just been sent through, so I'll forward that on to you.
Yeah.
Another question that's come through is, does one need to worry or take any issues when renting a property prior to buying in an area that meets family requirements?
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question. Just repeat the question for me again.
Does one need to worry or take any issues when renting a property prior to buying in an area that meets family requirements?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question, but if I understand it from what you're saying, if you're renting in an area with the view of buying in that area, is there anything to look out for? I think that could be what the question is posing. And the answer is no, not really. There are a few people, especially vendors, private vendors, who will look into doing a rent to buy, which means that you can rent a property with the view of buying that property, and any rentals you've paid will actually be taken off, or there'll be some type of agreement with the seller, so that you're not sort of having to sort of use that as just wasted money. You know, you're not just paying for the rentals and rentals alone. That's not something that we tend to look into. Most of the vendors, especially the resales that we tend to cater for, are either from people who are actually even sort of living in their property now, and we don't tend to offer that facility. That facility can take a very, very long time as well. And we're sort of looking at sort of 6, 8, 7 a year plus months. You know, how do you sort of to sort of go with that? It's very, very difficult to sort of facilitate. So I do not have much advice. I don't have many clients looking at rent to buy options. But with regards to anything to look out for, I wouldn't say there's anything specially to look out for, rather than buying through the normal processes. So no, nothing really to report on there. Sorry.
No problem. Thank you for answering. Something else which may be a little bit different, because I know we do mainly deal with UK clients, but we do also work with people from anywhere around the world. Would you say anything is different for US citizens in terms of tax implications, obtaining residencies? Like, is anything different for people from the US?
Nothing at all. The process is exactly the same. And you have non-residents inside the European Union, and you have non-residents outside of the European Union. And they would just fall into the category of outside the European Union. So nothing really sort of extra. There's no sort of extra cost to pay at all. You would just fall into that category.
Okay, perfect. So we've run through quite a lot of questions now. I mean, we've got a little bit of time left if anyone wants to take this opportunity to unmute themselves and speak with Ben directly. That's completely up to you. Otherwise, unless there's anything else you need to cover, Ben.
No, I think that's pretty much everything that I've got down that I wanted to cover in this session. I think what we're going to look at is we're going to do a session aiming mainly at the golden visa, which is going to be next week. And what we're going to do on a session, hopefully will be next week, dependent on if we're allowed out to play. We want to sort of start taking you into the properties themselves. So we are going to start taking you around 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom properties at said price, and sort of showing you local areas, and try and do as much as we can remotely from here to give you as much knowledge and information, so that once things are lifted and things are relaxed a little bit and you decide to start flying again, then you can kind of go with a little bit more knowledge, and hopefully the process will work in your favor a bit more smoothly and a bit faster. So that's the plan. What I'm conscious of is I don't want to sort of go into too much detail, because as I say, sometimes it's very case by case specific. And if we sort of go into too much detail on one particular circumstance, it may sort of not be applicable to your particular circumstance. So if you do want to discuss anything with me, please feel free to contact me directly, and I can give you sort of more advice moving forward on a case by case basis. But it's going to be easier if we kind of take it a little bit more gradual and hopefully start to get you into some properties virtually. So you can see the build quality, the local areas. But just roughly, I mean, I would imagine that most people have been, for those of you who've got your cameras on, you can just show of hands for people that have actually been over to Spain. Is this area quite new for you all? So 1, 2, okay. So yeah, most people have actually, so most people kind of know the area and kind of know exactly what they're letting themselves in for. So what we can do is start to sort of say, right, at this price, this is what you can expect. And hopefully then it will give you a bit more food for thought moving forward. But anything you want me to find out or research or look at in your particular circumstance, give me a call, let me know via email, and I'll be more than happy to assist.
Thank you, Ben. What we can do is give everyone a moment. Like say, if anyone wants to unmute themselves and want to speak to Ben more personally, please feel free to do so now. I'm also putting his email into the chat again, so if anyone wants to email him, it's there for you. But would anyone like to ask any questions?
That means I've either bored you all senseless or that you've just had too much information. One of the two. Hopefully it's not the first one. But what I will do is I have a document PDF which kind of goes through everything that I've mentioned today and a little bit more. And if I take the email addresses from you all, I'll get that all sent out to you. So you've got that there. And again, just come back to me if there's anything that I've missed, or if you'd like to discuss anything in a bit more detail. Brilliant. Well, I think there's any more questions? Anything come through, or is that?
No, nothing else come through. I think, well, at least I hope we've answered everyone's questions. So, I mean, the only thing really left to say is I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their Saturday afternoon and the rest of your weekend. And if you've got any questions, as I said, Ben's email's there. Oh, hang on, something's just come through. What are your costs for finding properties?
Okay, so there is no cost whatsoever for using our services. The way it works and the way that we would make our commission, our money, would be we would take that from the vendor side, not from the seller side. So if, let's say, for instance, the vendor would say, you know, he wants 200,000 euros for a property, we would agree a percentage that would be our commission for selling that property, marketing that property, and obviously administering the sale. But nothing on your side as the potential buyer would be paid to us as a company. So it's completely free to use our service. And we, as I say, offer all the services, all the elements under one roof. So that's currency exchange, mortgage advice, obviously finding the right property, offering legal representation, or at least suggesting a solicitor that can act on your behalf. So yeah, for all the services we provide, it's completely free of charge.
Perfect. Okay. Well, I think that wraps up everything else. Well, wraps up everything for the afternoon. Anything else to add, or are we okay to finish here?
No, I think that's everything I had on my agenda for today. As I said, I'll send everything out on a document PDF, so you've got it there to recap. Obviously, this will be on our YouTube channel, so if you wanted to watch it through again, you're more than welcome to. And I'm only a telephone call away. This is very new for me. We haven't done this before. This is, I think, the third time I've actually done this, so forgive me if you know, it's not too smooth, but hopefully moving forward it will improve. But I very much appreciate you spending the time and logging in. And yeah, just give me a call if you need me.
Perfect. So we'll wrap up there then. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. We'll follow up with an email in the next 48 hours with a copy of the recording. So obviously, if there's anything that you may have missed, you can watch it again. Otherwise, you can contact Ben directly, as mentioned previously.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Tia. Thank you, everyone, for joining in, and we'll speak to you soon.